That's right. I'm there. He's super nice. Yes, you got this young kid. That's an idiot.
Okay, yeah, so we'll just go on.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah, and settled. That's good. That's fine. It's awesome. You gotta be responsible. Sorry. You know, yeah. And yeah, it's okay. Okay, so he's introducing him. Against this. Okay. Yeah, it's just maybe the president. Well, I'm like, okay. Yeah. Because you guys are there. Okay. Listen. Oh my God, it's got things.
Good morning. We give a good morning to Will. For those of you who don't know, this is Will Ohrum, our broker. He's taken the time today. He wants to fit a lot of different things as the market's changing. Contracts, understanding is becoming more and more important. So he wanted to take an hour, at least to start today, to go over frequently things that he's seen frequently, questions, new documents that have come up that maybe we're not aware of, and then we'll end it with some basic Q and A's, okay? So we'll kick it off. Well, go ahead.
Well, I'm just curious, like how long everyone in the room's been in business. So like 1 year, raise your hand. Good. 2, 3. Has to be more. Reed's an old words like me. Brian's been around forever. So some like a little bit of tenure in the business. I really wanted to cover today some things that I get calls from agents on that are repeating calls for me and things that I think everyone maybe heard. There's one thing I realized yesterday, a new form came out from the Prior Forms Committee in March. I think they just put the form out and didn't really talk about it because I didn't realize it was even there. If you've ever been in one of those situations where the buyer and the seller could not agree to disperse escrow, if your contract went down the tubes or something, you have to wait out that 180 days in the agreement of sale. And if nothing is filed or the broker knows nothing in the wind about a case being filed, the buyer can request the deposit to be returned to them and the broker has to return. There's a form for that now. Before we had to contact the buyer, have them write a letter. Now the agent involved in that transaction can fill out the form, get the buyer to sign it, and send it to the broker, and they have to release the escrow deposit. So that's on PA forms. If you probably won't remember that, but if you ever have an earnest money dispute and it's gone 6 months or more or less time, if you changed it in the agreement of sale, you would need this form to get your escrow dispersed.
It doesn't have to go through litigation then, right?
It does not,
Okay.
right? Does not have to go to mediation either. That was the first step.
But it had to exceed the mediation timeline.
Yes,
So the contract has 180 and it's already generated unless you change it and make it earlier. Would you say it's best practice to make it earlier?
I make it 90 days.
Okay.
Because some, like, if your contract does go down the tubes and it's over, there's a lot of heated emotions sometimes, and people are just, you can't get them to be reasonable the first couple of weeks after the sale because they're still just plain old mad. But after 90 days or so, people have calmed down. If you haven't heard anything, then I would just get the buyer to send that in and release their deposit. The seller's out of it. The seller has no say in that if they haven't filed anything. So I got 3 or 4 calls last week on advertising. Some of it dealt with t-shirt advertising and how you have to show the brokerage and the agent name. And also I see a lot on Facebook. There's some examples that we have about how not to display your houses on Facebook. This is a great ad about a house going pending, which is great for any agent, except it only has the agent's email and the agent's cell phone number. There's no office number in this ad or an office name anywhere. So the office name is there down the bottom in the black section. So it's very prominent for the agent, not prominent for the office, which does not conform to advertising regulations. I have a couple of examples of these where they're fantastic ads. They show nice, they have a nice story, but they only include the agent's telephone number and not the office. If the commission sees this, they can issue you an instant fine, or if someone reports you. The commission does, based on seeing that, they don't even need to give you fair warning. They just now send you an instant fine.
And that magic number starts at what, Will? I'm just curious, not planning to
I
buy.
think it's 200 would be the initial fine, but it can be as high as 10,000. So it's really not worth it. The way to make this easy, I know Nicole does this, is have a template saved in your phone or on your tablet, whatever device you're using to create that ad, and just always insert that in your ad. Yes.
What's the minimum requirements for the ad?
You have to, wherever you appear, if you're talking about being an agent, you have to show the office name and telephone number. If you should have your telephone number there, your telephone number can just not be more prominent than the office number. So those are the rules. You can have equal prominence, but you cannot be more prominent.
So we've been bringing this up more, through the office meeting, we've been having that little slide. There's been a bigger crackdown around all this. I don't know who's behind it or why, or the money grab, but we're just trying to prevent you guys from being at risk and then having a financial penalty being put in place. So we're gonna keep doing this reminder every month, but it was he had some examples he wanted to show. Obviously we talked to the agents, but this is why it's important. 200 to 10 grand. I think anybody wants that. But
Yeah, and just a follow-up question, and if it's not appropriate, let me know, but I'm curious to know if we know the reporting sources of these, if that's trackable. Is it probably other agents or other brokers mad at other agents reporting this?
That's probably some of it. I know just from talking to other brokers in the area that agents get mad at each other, or someone loses in a deal and they get on Facebook and start like researching you, and then they'll just upload it like to the commission because they're mad.
And they're all adults.
Everybody. I'm not trying to bash anyone specifically. I want you all to be in compliance. Why I'm bringing it up and showing you, this is a great ad here about a house coming on to the market. Unfortunately, it does not have the office name anywhere, and it's also a for sale by owner. So there's no listing agreement. There's not been a consumer notice with that person. So on many levels, this ad does not meet commission regulation. So if you ever have a question, ask me, ask Ryan about it, or another agent, just whoever's around.
it's easier that if you're doing anything in real estate, put the broker name in whatever. That's it.
Yes.
I have a quick question. Though.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between an ad shooting out there versus something you just post on your business page and your business page, like your business Facebook page? And does that make sense? Like my homepage website has all that. Does every post have to have that or just ads?
I actually had this question
It's
last week.
unclear. I'm sorry if I wasn't here.
No, I mean, I met an agent called me and asked me that very same question last week, and I called our legal line, and they said, probably so.
Right, so years ago, I had this issue with Mike, it's, you know, you made it when somebody reports you, right? Like, but the website, the commission's very unclear. It says the website has to have information. Well, if your homepage has information in your that's the tricky part, right?
Question?
So we're not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. No, you're good. I'm sorry.
Business page has all my information, but if you scroll down your business page, eventually your header is gone. So you don't really know where you're at. Like you don't know you're on an agent's business page. Also, sometimes your business page generates a story on Facebook, or they generate to Instagram and all the other places it goes. And that necessarily does not show your contact information. That's where the violation occurs.
You think they just update?
Well, the reason this rule exists is it has to be easy for the consumer to contact your broker. So that's why you always have to show the broker's name and telephone. And so that you don't think I'm out there picking on everyone for doing bad ads, my little happy face on this ad shows you that this is one that actually conforms. This is one in this office, Dustin, who's promoting a new listing, and he's got the office name, the office number. It's not more prominent or less prominent. It's all the same font, the same type print, everything. So this conforms. You have Justin. Yes.
Somebody trained him well.
Yes. And also one from Josh Musser that is the same thing. He's talking about houses he's recently sold and a little blurb about he also has active listings. So contact him for that. And he shows his office number and his cell number. Same font, same type, same everything. This is a really good app. So if you need examples, these are people that you should maybe check. Some other questions that I get is sometimes people will call me and say, an agent wrote this clause on the agreement of sale. So this is a new construction agreement, and I know it's very hard to read. But this is the clause that they wrote on here. Contract is contingent upon home inspection to be completed within 14 days. So that's a really good thing to write in the contract because the new construction agreement does not contain inspection clauses. So this is a pending sale. The buyer completes their home inspection on this new construction home, and there are issues according to the home inspector. And when those issues are brought to the builder's attention, he says, yes, I'll fix them, but I'm not going to sign anything because I don't have to. So they were partly right because the only thing in the agreement was the buyer was allowed to do an inspection. There's no remedy like the standard agreement of sale has, where you have a certain number of days where the buyer completes that inspection, submits a report, the seller has to respond in writing, or the buyer can walk. None of that is included in this agreement. So they were kind of at a stalemate on what to do. It eventually did close, but not without a lot of angst amongst the parties, because while this was a good thing to write in there, it wasn't complete.
So if anyone's doing new construction, what would you say the best language is or document?
In this particular deal, and this was an in-house deal.
I'm dealing with Burks right now, and it's a little hairy.
Is it built already?
Built. There's a lot of, we're supposed to sell tomorrow, and we're not.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stuff around the punch list stuff and an inspector. Like they were sweeping drywall into the ductwork. Like that kind of stuff. And had they not had an inspector, no one would have caught that because you don't see that.
Right.
So fortunately, Burks is doing most of it, but had they not had that protection, I'm guessing Burks would have law. If anyone's doing it, and they want to have that extra layer of protection for their buyer, what would you do? What would you suggest?
In your particular case, in the new construction agreement, the punch list is specifically cited in there as an agreement between the buyer and the builder that survives closing. So that would give your buyer protection, as long as the builder signs it or someone representing the builder. What I would have done here, because this contract was originally written on the standard agreement of sale, because the house was up completely finished, except for the yard and the sidewalk and the driveway. The agent requested, or the builder requested that it be put on the new construction agreement because that's what he was familiar with. So they changed it and then wrote this on there. If that was the case, if that's what the builder insisted on, I would have copy pasted the entire inspection clause out of the standard agreement onto an addendum and have them sign that. That way there's cause, action, remedy, and duties all cited about who does what when you have that. Perfect. Did you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna say it was the spec house. For clarification, like it was already built, like I didn't know if you mentioned that.
Yes, this wasn't your deal though.
No.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on that? I sometimes talk really fast, so.
For those that have little and new construction experience, I'm just sitting here thinking Chat GPT, is there like a checklist for those of us who are realtors want to represent our buyers really well that might give us some things to look for? Like this is a huge nugget.
Yes.
Like even inspections with a new build feels like a class or a large thing. Is there something like that? Like for new construction, for agents representing?
There's
Specific that I know of.
the Builders Association has a designation, I think, called the CSP, Certified New Home Sales Professional. You might be able to pick up some tips there. The best thing you can do is find someone in the office who has done new construction, if it's your first one, and help you through that. Some builders are worse than others, and I'm just telling you that from experience. Burks is usually pretty good to work with. This particular case was a smaller home builder, and he just had a certain way he did things, and that was it, period. So it's either take it or leave it, really. So it really depends on the builder and their reputation, and the strength of the builder's sales agent, if they have one, can usually help get those problems worked out. Okay. This one has a lot of fine print down here, but this was a contract that was written on a house that was pending, fell through. So our agent, we're on the sell side, has a home inspection, and a structural engineering report, an electrical report, all kinds of reports that they give into the buyer. So, and then the buyer's agent writes on here, the seller agrees to update the electrician estimate from the last home inspection. Okay, if there was more than one inspection, I can see a problem there, because there's no date on what from that inspection. They also want to escrow the buyer $10,364 for a new roof. If you know going into a deal, there's an escrow, how about just attach the escrow agreement right to the agreement of sale? That way there's no discrepancy that way. I would also attach the electrical inspection maybe and have everyone initial and sign it. And then the last one, I'm not really sure why this is here. Buyer has agreed to accept the property and waive the contingency for a basement structural concern. The buyer will take the opinion of the home inspector, section 15 of the home inspection. So again, there's no date, so we don't know which home inspection or which inspection they're talking about. And if they're going to accept it, why not just waive the inspection clause? So I see several red flags here, especially if you have a picky underwriter. This is not going to make it past them. They're going to be asking all kinds of questions. So the agent and I talked about this. Most of this got scratched off the agreement, and it was put in the appropriate places or initialed correctly so that maybe the underwriter wouldn't see it, but we still made disclosure everywhere. Any questions on that? This is a commercial sales agreement. And this buyer, we're on the list side. There's a buyer's agent. They elected the mortgage clause. So they elected that here. No information filled in on the entire mortgage clause except for a commitment date. This commitment date passed several times with several extensions. it never did close. And then in the end, the seller wanted to keep the buyer's deposit, which they can't do because it was contingent upon financing. They just never spelled out what terms were the financing. So there's several problems here. There's really no way the seller can terminate in this section except for non-receipt of a mortgage commitment, not based on unacceptable loan terms or anything because they're not spelled out. In the standard agreement of sale, this is the commercial agreement, only the seller can terminate based on the mortgage clause. So if your buyer gets a termination or a denial, they have an obligation to continue to search for a mortgage to meet the terms that are spelled out in the agreement until the settlement date lapses or the seller terminates. So we recently had a situation where I think the buyer lost their job. So there was no way they were going to get a mortgage because they were unemployed. However, the selling agent insisted that they continue to try. So, and then when they couldn't get a mortgage, the selling agent said that they were not entitled to their deposit. Or if the seller was going to terminate, they were going to keep the deposit. They cannot do that. It's the seller's unilateral right to be able to terminate based on the mortgage clause, but the deposit goes back to the buyer because it was contingent upon a mortgage.
So if they don't meet settlement date,
Then it's over. And it's
who gets the deposit? That
the buyer.
the buyer's still
Right. It's contingent upon a mortgage. So it always goes back to the buyer when you're terminating based on the mortgage clause. In this particular agreement, it says the buyer or the seller could terminate based on non-receipt of a mortgage commitment. So that's a little bit easier in the commercial agreement. I don't know why the residential agreement is different. I know some of you met Gary Nuccio when he went over the new forms with us last year. I think he's on the Pennsylvania Forms Committee. And I've had many discussions with him that I think our mortgage clause stinks because of this obligation to continue to spend money to find a mortgage when you know you're not going to get approved, really. So what I suggest to agents when this comes up is you open up some dialogue with your listing agent and tell them, like, we're not going to get a mortgage. My buyer lost his job. Like, are you going to hold us to this so that someone can open some dialogue with the seller to get them to initiate the termination? That's how the seller gets their property back on the market. That's the goal, to get it sold. So you would think people would want to keep moving forward, but sometimes they don't.
So I think there's a lot of confusion on when a seller has the right to an EMP. What would that scenario look like?
There would have to be a clear cut default for the sellers to lay claim to the EMD. Let's say you've had a contract, you're through mortgage commitment, the buyer has their commitment, you've done inspections, the seller's done all that stuff. And a couple days before closing, the buyer decides, I'm gonna retire and move to the wonderful state of Florida. And they just say, we're not closing. That's a clear cut default. And in the state of Pennsylvania, based on case law, it has to be that clear. Your seller is really banging their head against the wall if they're going to try to claim it and claim some kind of buyer fraud or something. Just
What about the timelines? Because you only have so long to fight this, right? So what if you pass that timeline?
you mean inspection timeline or?
No, because
sell?
I had this exact scenario happen before. You were not the broker who handled this. And it was lack of communication through the broker and nothing ever happened of it. And there was nothing I could do for my buyer, and the listing agent was awful. Literally reaching out to my buyer and all kinds of things, and nothing ever became of it. And I felt like my buyer would grant the third deposit. But once there's the next page of our two of our contract, you have like, I think it's 90 days, 180 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, once it's past that, then does the seller get to keep the deposit?
If it goes beyond that 180 or whatever you put in, buyer, and there's no action taking place with mediation, the buyer automatically gets it back. They have to request it back, or the agent can now with this new form. But you'd have to take action through mediation in order for the seller.
Even if this happened years ago,
Who's holding the deposits?
Yeah.
the seller, broker was.
If they're still holding it, and I'll show you when we're done. There's a new form. The buyer signs it, you send it to that broker, and if there's no litigation and no dispute paperwork filed, they must release that deposit to the buyer.
So like emails requesting and all that were ignored, like that doesn't.
Well, that should have been sufficient even before this form came
Right.
out. So now would be the time that that buyer should go to an attorney. And I would happily speak with that attorney to point out what the law is, and have a strongly worded letter sent to that
How
broker.
much do you think that would cost? Because we're talking $5,000 that they had.
Well, certainly, yeah, I'm, so I would only charge you to, it would probably be about $250.
I'd be a hero if I ever got that money back.
That broker cannot release that deposit because the Pennsylvania Commission regulation says everyone has to agree in writing to disperse the deposit, period. Doesn't say when the broker decides it's appropriate. So they're walking on some thin ice there. That broker should be reported, in my opinion. Okay. Here are some fines from the real estate commission. So I went on to the commission website, and you also can look these up to see what agents are getting fined for. So this agent is from Cumberland County. This was against Real Broker LLC. So we're not going to talk about them, but it's public record, so I'm allowed to say that. Because they failed to put commitments and agreements between the broker and the consumer in writing. So whenever you're talking about like inspection contingencies and you're texting with the other agent or emailing and you're like, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna take care of this, but not this and not this. All that has to be reduced into writing, and both the buyer and the seller have to sign it. So it doesn't matter what's in your inbox. It matters what's actually on the form in the paper. So if you're reported for that kind of work, this is what happens to you. So not only did the broker pay a $10,000 fine, I think someone in here also lost their license over this bill. So
What was the scenario?
Yeah, but what-
I got lost in, I can't read it.
they didn't put the contract terms in writing between the consumers.
It was a verbal agreement
Yes,
that didn't make it.
and something went south,
Yeah.
obviously. So unfortunately, with these things, we don't get to see all the background on what happened. And unless you know this person, you can pick up the phone and call them. They're probably not going to talk to you about it anyway, because it's probably a little embarrassing. But these are things that the commission will fine people over.
So for example, like if the buyer and seller agent had a verbal agreement to do XYZ, didn't happen, one side got mad, and then this happened.
Potentially,
Okay.
yes. We don't know exactly what
But
was not
that's
put in
kind of
writing.
a scenario that,
Yes, this could have been a buyer agency agreement that wasn't put in writing. That would be a contract between the consumer and the agent or between the parties. So we don't really know what it was that wasn't reduced in writing. So the moral of the story is always reduce it in writing. Follow up with an email, but the parties have to sign it. It doesn't matter what your email says if you end up in court. What matters is what's signed. This one was someone, I've actually reported people for this, for acting as rental agents without a proper license or acting as brokers without a proper license. I remember one time when I had my own office, I got this call from this person. Hey, I just wanted to tell you about this house I'm handling in Enola. It's this price. And I'm like, what do you mean you're handling it? Well, my friend's out of town, so I'm helping handle their sale. And I tried to explain to them that that is illegal in the state of Pennsylvania. So I eventually just wrote a letter to the commission. I don't know whatever happened with them, but this is a case where someone unlicensed got levied a fine of $20,000 against by the real estate commission.
Can you elaborate on that? So you're saying somebody called you that wasn't a realtor, wasn't
Yeah.
licensed? Okay, so it's not like us helping an agent that's out of
No,
town. Okay, so this was an unlicensed person.
I have a friend that's not licensed.
Yeah. So if I'm out of town, I can call Bob. Okay, got it. Okay.
These can get a little confusing because we don't know all the background. But if you're found in violation, if you don't want to end up in front of the commission, two or three times this year, we've had interviews with a commission investigator, Ryan and I, and an agent from this office. I think all of those cases, from what I know, will be dismissed. They're really just angry consumers, but it's not where you want to end up. But when there is flagrant disregard for the law, it has to be like open, flagrant, continued on. The commission does get involved and they find those people and they take their license. So if you're seeing that kind of activity, you should also be reporting it because our code of ethics requires you to report that to the real estate commission. So I have a couple of other examples. Here's someone that paid $5,000 for misleading advertising. This could be lack of the broker's number in the ad. So unfortunately, this was a KW office, but way north of here, so I don't know who they were. But so this is a case where someone's advertising got them in trouble. So just things that I want you to be aware of and be conscious of whenever you're on Facebook talking about real estate. You're always licensed 24/7 all the time. We just talked about the mortgage contingency in the agreement of sale, and this is an article from the PAR legal line. If you don't subscribe to PAR's email, you should, because that's where the legal notices come from. And you get lots of examples of things that we should not be doing as agents. That's where I got most of this material today, was right off PAR's website and the PAR legal line. I'm not going to go back over the mortgage clause and who has the right to terminate because we talked about that already. In the inspection clause, this is another thing that comes up maybe once a week for me. Agents will call me, we're in the middle of our inspections, we responded, they haven't responded yet, we responded early, and 5 more days is up. It doesn't work like that. If your initial inspection clause was 5 days, it's 5 days. 5 days after that, the seller can respond back to you, and then your buyer has 2 days after that second 5 days to decide if they're going to accept it, stay in the deal, or walk. So that still comes up as one question I get constantly. Just because you responded early does not mean the timeline was short. The other thing is,
does everyone understand that? That's the most common one. You have 10 days in there and you reply on day 7. You'll have 3 more days in that contingency plus the 5 plus 6.
exactly, but I also think that's another flaw in our agreement of sale.
Correct.
PAR and the form committee could just put one line in there that says, once the buyer responds, we move on to the next 5 days. And it would be that easy, but they don't do that. And that's not what it says. Nicole just had an instance where someone responded after the deadline. And fortunately, she's on the sell side, so her seller was not obligated to even respond to that, basically, and she didn't respond.
To be clear, they gave one reply to inspections in the timeline. And then
Which
gave
you
another,
honored.
which we honored,
Right.
and then gave another one after the timeline. So I never respond until their timeline is up.
That's the right thing to do, is to wait out your initial inspection.
And it always starts the next business day, right? Like contract, the timeline starts the next.
Yes.
Correct?
The
Or not
time-
business day, the next.
Well,
So, yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So if you ratify a deal at 5 o'clock on Sunday, when the business day is the next day?
No.
Or when is it?
so the time is of the essence clause in the agreement of sale says we start counting the day after the last party ratifies. So if the last ratification initial is Sunday, day 1 is Monday. So it goes straight down the calendar. It's not business days. Don't skip holidays. It's right down the calendar.
Now, I've had somebody get as detailed as the hour.
Well, that's taken a little too far. I mean, typically, I would say,
It's 11:59 PM.
yeah, yeah,
Not,
that's what I was just gonna say.
not your hourly of getting the ratified.
Right. So I guess you could limit it if you
Put it right.
initialed and dated and put the time you initialed at your last initial, that would be your ratification, so you could prove your timeline. But that's like, we have enough to do. Let's not make it harder. Any questions on that?
So yes, and only because I'm in the middle of it right now.
Okay,
So I'm trying to delay a response from the seller until the appraisal comes back. So I just want to make sure I have my days
okay,
lined up. So they, within 4 days of going under contract, had their inspections.
And then did they?
10, the 10, yeah.
so on day 4,
Day 4 inspection was done. Day 9 got to reply to inspections. So I then have, not from day 9, I still have from day 10, I have 5 days from day 10.
correct,
Okay.
yeah,
So you have 6 days from receipt.
So we essentially have 15 days for a seller to respond.
but that's not what the agreement says. So it's 10 days for the buyer to prepare
Right.
their ask, basically, or accept or reject. They have those 3 options. And then 5 days for the seller and the buyer to try to negotiate something together. And if that doesn't work, 2 days for the buyer. Once that 5 days expires, 2 days for the buyer to decide if they're staying in it or not. If they couldn't come to a
So
mutual
if the
agreement.
buyer gives a reply on day 5, does the seller have to respond then?
Yeah.
So the seller still has till day 15, essentially.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So if you get lucky and get your appraisal requirements back, you could maybe cover it all at the same
I
time.
know.
But the appraisal clause has, the mortgage clause has some different ways to respond if they're lender required or safety requirements. So they may not come under the home inspection. Keep
Yeah, that would be a
in mind.
mortgage
Yeah,
stipulation.
any questions on that?
Are there any
Yes.
issues if the seller replies? So 10-day contingency, buyer gets back to you in 5. Should this, I think Nicole might have said this, but should the seller wait till day 10 to reply, or can you get it buttoned up? It's not a big deal. There's no risks there. Can we just button it up, get the negotiations done and move on, or? should
You
we-
can get it signed. But the buyer could come back on day 10 and ask for something else.
You just have to be ready for an additional.
I would just simply wait. Even if you and the agent know nothing is gonna happen, we wait out the timeline. Because one or the other can negotiate something, or if you're inside that 10 days, the buyer can just come back and say, I reject it.
So on the seller side, it's just preparing them that they can come back and ask for more. Okay.
Any more inspection questions? This is probably the most common, would you say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Inspection, mortgage, these 2 things, which is why I knew there was a par legal article on this. That's why I went back and found it and put it in here. Julie can email you this stuff if you would like, but you can also find it. And then this is the number that all of you should put in your phone. TAR provides for us as part of our member dues, a free legal advice on the PAR legal line. There's a hotline, it's manned 9 to 3, I think, Monday through Friday, either 4 PM or I forget, but I think it's 9 to 3 PM. You call, leave your name, your telephone number, and a short message about what you're calling about, and one of the hotline attorneys will call you back. They won't give you specific advice if your seller needs legal advice or something, but they will answer specific questions about contract or disputes between agents. So when I have to pay my realtor's dues in December every year, I always think it's a little bit high. But when I think about how many times I call the PAR legal line, and I didn't have to call my own attorney at $125 an hour, I have more than gotten my dues back just from this. So you can, being a licensed agent, you can call there and ask questions. And I would, if you can't get me, or you can't get Ryan or someone else that you trust, call the paralegal line or even call them first. So
What's that
I'm okay.
number, William?
I had an agent call me the other day. They called you first, and then she called me, and I told her what I thought, and I said, I said, I'm 99% sure that I'm right, but here's the number for the paralegal line. Call them and give them the scenario. And then she texted me back and said, the paralegal line agreed with you. So I just wanted to double check, because there was that.
Is that different than calling Peter Ruth?
I've never spoken with Peter Ruth. He's affiliated with RAYAC.
Right, it is different because this is Pennsylvania. Peter just represents RAYAC. So and then I think, is he on the board or PAR maybe?
Maybe. These are the PAR attorneys, the ones who write our forms. So they teach webinars on PAR forms. So if you're get on the PAR's email list for agents, and they'll notify you about webinars or stuff. They do this thing called Calls to the PAR Legal Line. It's a pretty interesting webinar because it's like time for popcorn, and sometimes I am amazed at how dumb agents are and some of the things they do. Not any of you.
They always offer that for continuing ed.
Yes.
I always take it.
Any questions on that? If you can't read that, I know my handwriting is bad. So that's the end of that. So does anyone have any questions specific to contract that you would like to go over? Okay.
When do you recommend creating an addendum versus additional comments?
What do you mean additional?
Writing like you showed, do you just recommend creating an addendum and writing it? Is that more of an underwriting thing like you kind of hit on? Do you have a little down?
An addendum is no clause, right? So I would try to stick to the standard language on the forms as much as you can. That even our change to terms addendums now are related to the lines of the agreements that you're changing. That was to get agents away from ad-libbing things. And however, there are cases where you have to write something out. I get that question a lot from agents. They'll read to me a clause that they wrote and there will not be a beginning or an end or a remedy. So that's what I try to get people. You have to be concise, concrete with ending date, beginning date, and what the ramification is if whatever you're writing doesn't happen or does happen.
What did you mean in your example about the inspections then? Did you just mean just initial what was from the previous contract? So everyone's acknowledging, do you put that on page 14 then, like as an additional checkbox? Or the agreement of sale?
I would not do that.
Oh, okay.
I would make an amendment to the seller disclosure form. Because
Okay.
it's really the seller who's disclosing those other inspections, and I would have the buyer initial every single page of that
Okay.
inspection.
So use the seller's disclosure versus the contract.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. I've done a lot of bank REO work. That's how I initially met Ryan and Joe, was they were selling my bank-owned properties. And those bank asset managers are sticklers for having buyers initial every single thing that they knew about that property. Because sometimes we get them pre-inspected, and then we not only incorporated the inspections into the agreement with them, which I wouldn't do for underwriting, but we also integrated it into any disclosure they were making, and the buyer had to sign every page on every inspection that we had.
William,
Understanding that, like if you're going to include a previous inspection, you're saying go to the seller's property disclosure addendum that changes a part of the seller's property disclosure. And what are you writing in? Just see attached
Yes.
inspection? Okay.
So that would be what I would do in my own listing. So your seller, if they learn about things about their property, are also obligated to update their seller property disclosure statement based on that last inspection. So they can't, it gets a little tricky because some agents say, well, I don't want my seller to read that because then they might have a mandatory disclosure. They still cannot hide any kind of defect or something that they know is wrong. That's flat out against the law. So they should be disclosing it. So the way to protect yourself from that is just to have the buyer initial everything.
Okay.
In that particular case, the buyer obviously read the inspection because the buyer agent was reciting costs and defects of structural damage in the basement in the agreement of sale. If there's financing involved, I definitely would not do that because your underwriter is going to flag that and say, no, we're not, like, why would they lend you money on a basement wall that's going to collapse? Really, that could be what potentially happens. So just be very careful what you're writing on the agreement of sale. I know that's a long-winded answer,
That's
but
great, but I didn't even think, keep it to the seller's disclosure, keep it off the agreement of sale. And you're saying it's sufficient enough to not have to update the seller's disclosure, just say see attached on an
you
addendum.
could do that. Yes,
Well, that's.
I would do both.
Oh,
Update the seller disclosure and show them the inspection.
But then the buyer should initial an inspection.
Acknowledge,
Okay.
especially if they're waiving inspections based on receipt of that other inspection. The other place where I see potential claim being brought against agents is for contracts where inspections were waived. And then the buyer moves in and a month later, the basement
I
floods.
was gonna say, good housekeeping method, it's not mandatory or required, but that for your inspection, get a home inspection, there's a block to waive that. Like they acknowledge that
Yeah.
it's presented and they decided to decline it. So if you ever have waived inspections, get that one signed. Because that'll cover you.
Yes.
Extra negative.
Go ahead.
If I'm the buyer agent and I have a home inspection, and my buyer is deciding to walk away from the deal based on the home inspection. Is the selling agent, can the selling agent refuse to receive that inspection and refuse to give it to the seller? Like that, they're not obligated, like if I email them saying, hey, we're walking away due to this inspection. So agent now has a hold of it. Are they allowed to say, no, I like to not show the seller? Because I've had a similar situation where they're like, don't send it to me. And I'm like, well,
Can do that.
okay,
I don't know that I would bring the listing agent because there could be something that comes back to haunt you. That's really what it comes down to.
but if the listing agent receives it, then they have to pass it on. But if they never receive it, then they don't. Is this a gray area?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is really. I mean, if I received it, I would read it and I would share it with
If you
myself.
received as an agent, listing agent, you have not. Especially,
right.
regardless, I mean, it was sent. If you never received it, I wouldn't, I'm gonna talk about it anymore. You gotta just.
When a buyer agent say, hey, we're terminating based on basement issues, like they're gonna probably tell you something that you now legally are gonna be told.
There is one case where the buyer moved in on the seller disclosure, there was no sinkholes, no subsidence, none of that. And then the neighbor comes over and says, hey, did you know the buyer owner was filling up a sinkhole? They put all the grass clippings in there and everything else that came out of the yard. Like, just like anything can come up. And sometimes we're not prepared for our seller to be lying. And in this case, I don't think our agent knew it, but the seller definitely lied about it. They're going to be liable.
The seller or the agent?
I think the seller will. I don't think our agent knew it. Like, how would you? Unless you were out there helping her put grass in a sinkhole.
So that usually plays out fine for the agent. It's just the scariness of mitigation.
I don't want to see you go through that. So like over disclose. I just bought a little house in Carlisle. And the first thing I did is I went back to the old listing and I printed out the buyer seller disclosure. And I'm going to attach that to my disclosure. And I'm going to have everyone sign it. Because that's how I protect myself. Do you want to keep going? I don't even know what time it is.
You got about 15.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Yes, William, can you hear me?
There's a hand. that's
Somebody
raised.
has.
Talking.
You have to, go ahead.
I've heard a lot of different answers, but this exclusive agent or the designation of the agent in the contract, exclusive agency or office.
Designated?
Yeah.
Okay. if you are on both sides of the transaction,
No, I get that.
okay, and both principals have agreed in writing that you can do that, you're a dual agent.
Right, but the other ones, the other two options.
Okay, a designated agent is, if you have to be from the same office to be designated agents. I'm the dual agent, and I'd say agent A is the designated buyer's agent, and agent B is the designated seller's agent. That's designated agency.
Only in dual agency is there designated agency that
Correct.
I've been looking for 7 years for that. Thank you.
You're in the right place.
The other years.
The other question on the agent block in the agreement of sale is all company agents represent the seller or just the one
Yeah.
in the agreement? It's just the one in the agreement.
Mia, you go
But that's
ahead.
exclusive.
Yes, I have a question because one of my sellers right now, the buyer did the inspection and then he walked away because of the inspection report, you know, and everything that was listed on the inspection report. And I did advise the seller that, you know, we needed to update the seller's disclosure, but he doesn't want to because he doesn't agree with the inspection. And so I'm not 100% sure, you know, how to handle that properly. And there's been a lot of back and forth going on about it.
That's a good question. Are there things in there that you think could be a material defect?
Absolutely.
Then you must disclose them whether the seller chooses to or not. If you know, you know.
Could the seller pay for a different inspector and to see if there's any?
Or a licensed professional in that category with the other.
Yeah, something to negate the finding. Yes, you could
If
do
there's
that.
like something specific.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Mia?
Yeah, but okay, he's not gonna do that either. Yeah, he's really, really difficult. But my thing is, I do feel like when we have showings and so forth, and because the seller's disclosure is not updated and the inspection had a long list, am I supposed to tell them, you know, the buyers up front, or I mean, what's the proper way? Because I know some of the stuff on the inspection, I feel like it's I don't agree with him. I'm not in agreement with him really at all.
Okay, then this is probably not the answer that you want to hear, but if your seller is not willing to update the disclosure and make mandatory disclosure where you know it's required, you should drop that listing because you're gonna get sued.
Let your seller know that he is legally obligated to do this. Like,
They won't, I think they
right,
have.
yeah.
And she's saying he won't update it. You can't, as an agent, set out to hide something from someone. It's just not good business for her.
To be more
Okay.
versus, well, we should really,
Point.
we should
Yeah.
really, you know, disclose this. It's gotta be more of like, we don't have a choice. This is what we have to do now. I'm sorry.
Maybe when the seller say, I'm gonna drop your listing, that might be
They don't
the.
care.
And I'd be creeping on that listing after, that's for sure. If somebody else would.
Could you just upload the inspection into the MLS for agents only to view? Would that cover her?
Oh,
Yeah, you can.
Seller business is law, and you can't do that. So how would it drop the listing?
Yeah.
okay.
You kind of had this scenario, you got stuck in the middle of it. They worked it through, but it was. We were making disclosure, one of the sellers was saying, do not say something, and it worked out, but it's pretty sticky.
Okay. Thank you.
Sometimes I've gotten in a situation where the seller doesn't want to address some, like they want to try to skirt the inspection. And I always say, it's gonna come up over and over and over again. So just
Yeah.
either disclose it now or fix it, like one or the other.
Yes, I would start disclosing it or getting it fixed and then putting receipts attached to your seller disclosure form. That way you can say you've negated something that come up on a previous inspection. Anything else? Those are all really good questions. I didn't think I could fill an hour. Here I am.
I think we could probably need a whole hour on this Q&A.
Yeah. be honest, which is fine. I think we're a little over the year into the new CBC rules from the NAR legal settlement. Or the Department of Justice extorted money from us, basically. I still get questions from agents about when to use a CBC, the CBC form, and when to not use it. If your listing agreement says you are going to offer buyer compensation, you should be using a CBC. If your listing agreement has 0 in that clause in the listing agreement, you should be using the agreement of sale, not both, unless the buyer's agent is asking for more than what the CBC says. Everyone follow that? Okay, so the only situation where there should be both is, and we're just talking numbers, there's no set fee, we all know that. If you're offering 2% as a CBC, but the buyer's agent wants 3%, and the buyer's not going to pay that on their own employment agreement with that buyer's agent, they can put on the agreement of sale, the seller will contribute 1% to the buyer agency fee.
In addition to the CBC showing.
Right. Thank you for that, because it says in addition to the CBC.
And then when should they be using just an agreement of sale then?
If there's 0 in your listing agreement, no CBC.
And the buyer's not paying you.
Okay.
Right. I was just on a listing appointment last Tuesday, and the seller asked me, what should I do when we were talking about how to handle things in the NAR settlement? Because the first question was, we heard we don't have to pay commission anymore. And I said, well, that's partly true, but if you would like an easy sale, we should still offer buyer agent compensation, because I cannot have every buyer. And the reason we have an MLS is because we cooperate with each other to sell our listings. So that's, agents are using it as a marketing ploy to take listings with 0 CBC. So the seller thinks they're only going to pay 3%, only to find out later they're still paying 6%, partly on the agreement of sale. So
I had a situation where I was asking them what they were paying and they said it was negotiable.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, well, what does your listing agreement say?
Right.
And they wouldn't provide me with that. What do you do in that situation? Because that, I mean, if they wrote in that it's 2 and they're just telling you that it's negotiable.
Right.
Legally, like they should tell you that it's 2.
Yes. What the code of ethics says we should do is we report that person to the.
But as a listing agent, do you have the responsibility to share that? Like if you're saying, oh, the CBC is 2, and you're like, well, can you prove that to me? That's not gonna be higher. Do you have the right to ask for page 2 or something?
As far as I know, they removed that part from the code of ethics. You can no longer ask for that, but I think that that's a tough area for us right now, because I know there are companies out there who are using that exact line. It's negotiable. And I don't know how we respond to it.
But yeah, I don't want it to be a trend.
Yes,
I have a friend, I'm sorry, you're pointing to her, go ahead.
go ahead.
Who is an agent in another market. And we were just complaining about this yesterday, how she's a selling agent and buyer agents are coming in and they're getting mad at the seller offering X amount of percentage and they want this. And then they're threatening to walk away if they don't get paid. And I feel that they're not representing their buyer's best interest if they're making those threats, correct?
100%.
So I feel like this whole new thing has literally created another problem.
I think it's made it
Because like,
It's not
more
transparent.
the less clear to the
Yes, yes,
consumer
absolutely.
how I'll put it. However, it is what we have to work with, so we need to learn how to do it correctly. And if the buyer agent feels as though they're not being paid enough, they have to have the confidence to go back to their buyer and say, the seller's only paying me 2. I am representing you and I want 3 because I'm worth that.
I definitely.
Where are you doing that up front?
That's just setting standards.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. And you had it.
Yeah, so I just went under contract and I asked if they were offering anything and she told me, yeah, 2.5%, but write it into the agreement of sale. Should I have asked there, like what's on the listing agreement? Like,
Yeah.
she told me what they were offering, but said to write it into the agreement of sale.
That's entirely wrong. But I can teach them and say, well, if it's in the listing agreement, you're offering Cobra, so we need to do a CBC.
Okay, so I don't have a CBC right now, it's just in the agreement, like, we went under contract and it's just in the agreement of sale now.
Correct. So if the listing agreement says 2.5% would go for buyer's agent compensation, and the agreement of sale says, in addition to that, there's another 2.5%, you're getting 5%. But that's.
But I don't know, like, I don't know what the listing agreement says. So like now I know I'm getting paid 2.5%, but like, should I have just asked like, hey, what does the listing agreement say? Or can I just send that over in a CBC?
What I would have insisted that they sign a CBC.
Okay.
And you can now send your CBC with the agreement of sale. It does not have to be signed prior.
Okay,
Before, you could not use the agreement of sale to negotiate commission. That went by the wayside in the code of ethics whenever they came up with this whole NAR settlement thing. So you can just send it right with the agreement.
okay,
If they're telling you the CBC is 2.5%, that's CBC is 2.5%. It's not and added in the agreement of sale.
yeah, okay.
Go.
So if I have on the CBC 2.5% paid by the seller, the extra percentage that my buyer, because I have a situation buyer is paying me, do I put in the bottom, like buyer is paying 0.5 of the sell price, or the buyer agency contracts already, says already 3? That's enough?
If you want the seller to pay that and not the buyer, it goes in the agreement of sale.
She's saying if the buyer.
Collecting it from the
buyer. The buyer agency agreement should be.
If you're collecting it from the buyer, it does not have to be addressed in the agreement of sale. The buyer can pay you on the HUD.
As long as you have.
You just don't
the
title
agreement to show that.
So I don't have
Correct.
that. I'm making sign like on the buyer agency. Okay.
You do have a signature from your buyer, from the buyer agent. Have you explained to them they maybe would have to pay the difference?
Wouldn't you have to change the buyer's agency agreement if you have 3% and now you have to change it to 0.5% then?
You mean reduce it?
Yeah.
If you're not taking that extra 0.5 point, you're only doing the 2.5?
If you're getting 2.5 from the seller and your initial agreement was 3%.
You don't have to.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, yes, yeah, you don't have to change
It is up to
the
you.
agreement unless you're getting more. If you're getting more, I would definitely have it addition. If it's less, I would not worry.
I was under the impression they had to match.
No, because that's the buyer paying you. In this situation, the seller's paying you.
Okay.
So, I mean, to his point, if you're accepting less because the seller's paying you and the buyer's not paying anything, then it doesn't matter.
So if you have a buyer's agreement for 3% and you're getting 2.5% from the seller,
You have the right
to get that extra 0.5%.
point, or choose not to take that 0.5 point and just get 2.5.
I don't think you need to get anything initial if you're taking less. But let's say the seller is offering 3, but your buyer agency agreement says 3.5. And you're gonna take more, I said that wrong, but if you're gonna take more, I would get it. Initial.
The lawsuit truly has made us more money. On the buy
I
side.
think so.
If you're doing it properly, because I got 3% every time last year. And sometimes sellers were only given 2.5, buyers always gave the half. Because there's more conversation about it now than it was in the
My
past.
buyers must be poor because they never.
I do have questions from the listing side of this. So I'm seeing more and more, I have a CBC, I tell them ahead of time, and then they're just writing it into the contract. I've been forcing some people to eliminate that from the contract, sign my CBC. Is that the right thing to do? Or can I go back and amendment? And
Stick to the CDD and agreement sale. In addition to that.
so if it's on the agreement sale, do I need to go back to my listing contract and an update on there? It's just, I think it's laziness from the buyer agents but I'm getting smoke from. But that's what I'm saying. I'm getting smoke saying like, I want this crossed out and initialed and I want you to sign this. I mean, it is what it is, but that's the right thing to do then, is to get the CBC
To
signed.
me,
If you, within the listing agreement, that's the first agreement you sign. So I would always revert back to that. If you're offering CVC and they just want to eliminate a document for some reason, I don't know, that's.
Right, so
that's
keep
like-
pushing the buyer agent to
Yeah,
sign
okay,
it, just
I
get it out of here.
have ratified this thing that says that I'm giving you X. That I'm gonna send you the CVC because that's correct.
So you're saying technically if it's in my contract now, somehow 5% or whatever could be coming out
That's
of
really
this.
what it means. Very simple. That, not you, the seller.
Right.
Make sure that your sale goes to zero,
Yes.
or you will be paying for that
So
before you get the CVC.
Yeah, then like I said, I think it's just happening because buyer's agents just want to put it in there.
But there's laziness, lack of
So
understanding.
so it's saying we need the CBC. on it.
the NAR settlement said
Yeah,
that we were fixing commission by insisting that the buyer agency feed in the MLS. So we're no longer allowed to put it in the MLS. If you can advertise it anywhere else, you can let a CBC lay on the seller's kitchen table. You can text a picture of it and ask you what the CBC is. Like, how easy would that be? Just hit the print function on your phone and print the CBC if you're gonna write a contract on that house. Maybe make it easier for them and they won't be so resistant to using the form. And I'm not saying that you're not making it.
No, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't in the wrong with being persistent about it.
No, you're not.
Yeah, okay. I blame the broker. I say my broker wants this, so there you go. I say there's no choice.
One of the slides I had was, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So you said like it's our ethical duty to report. What if you don't report and they find out that you, like the state finds out you did not report something? Can you as a non-reporter be held liable? Cause I don't report like a lot.
Yes. So, yeah. I see things like that all the time that I probably should be reporting myself, but that would be a full-time job for me.
Yeah.
Just like agents are sometimes a little crazy in the things that they do.
They should scare for me.
Yes.
When you said it's like our duty, like,
It's like the consumer notice. No matter whom you're representing, put the responsibility on you to be honest with all parties in a transaction. So no matter if you're representing that principal or not. So if you're not, and the other agent realizes that, that's a reportable offense. So I mean, it's that simple, but that's making it very literal. But the commission goes after the flagrant violators. Like if you renewed your license without taking your continuing ed, there's a question there, have you taken the classes? And it's an honor system. If you go through the random audit and you can't prove you took the classes, you're gonna pay a fine and maybe get your license suspended.
That's a nice plug. Continuing there. How can please renew your license by a certain?
And if you renew without taking the education and you get caught, the minimum fine is $200 per credit hour. So I think this round is $2,800 would be the total of that. And you could be suspended for 5 years. That's how serious the commission takes that kind of thing. And even more crazy because here you get 3 continuing ed from Kaplan. I did it.
Which is awesome, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Quizzes are a pain in the butt, but it makes sure you pay attention, so it does work. I did it like in 14 hours. Good. I wanted to talk a little bit about escrow duties. I have had this happen to me in several of my last agreements where the selling agent or the buyer's agent tells me they'll mail me the deposit. And they're thinking that if they get it in the mail within the standard 7-day default, that they're covered. And they're really not. Like, it has to be delivered to the listing agent's office within 7 days. Like, you really have to tender the deposit. But I just caution you, if you're on the buy side, don't be lazy about maybe driving the deposit across town, not necessarily across the state.
Because we're used to that too, but that comes up with another question. So if you don't have it by that 7 days, what are the rights on the seller? Can they terminate?
They can't.
Citing that
Yeah.
was not received.
Yes. In the state of Pennsylvania, you need 4 things to have a binding agreement of sale. beginning date, ending date, principles, and consideration. The EMD is the consideration. So you do not have an enforceable agreement if you don't have the EMD. Lots of buyers get cold feet and just don't pay it. And then then the buyer's agent stops responding to you, and you're wondering why they're not sending you copy anymore. So EMDs are an important part of getting your agreement ratified at the initial stages. When I first started in the business, there were no cell phones. We didn't even have fax machines, and our contracts were carbon copies. So, like, you guys have it easy today. We do electronic signatures, and you can send it anywhere around the world you want. We have express mail. Like, there's no reason to miss an EMD deadline. You also, as a listing agent, should not be carrying it around for a few days once you receive it. You have to get it to your broker's office the next business day. So just be very careful with that. When I was reading all the commission fines and stuff, there were many for lack of proper tendering of the EMD. We talked about escrow duties of the broker when we went over that form. That was one thing I was going to cover. I wanted to cover a little bit about lockbox access, because this just happened to someone where they sent the carpet guy to the listing without anyone else being present. And the listing agent found out about it, and they were irate, and the seller was irate. It just got way out of hand for what actually really happened. It ended up being filed as a mediation complaint at the board. I mean, got really bad. So lockbox access for us is a privilege. The only way that you should be going into property is if you have confirmed access. Either go and show through showing desk, or you've spoken with the agent, and make sure that you're actually taking a buyer there. One of the things on the legal line recently was a buyer agent made an appointment to go show someone's listing. They were actually going to that listing to make a promotional video for themselves. They filled out the buyer feedback as not interested, sent that through showing desk, and then posted their promotional video on their Facebook page.
Please tell me that wasn't somebody.
No, it wasn't. And I don't know who it was. This was just on the legal line. The listing agent saw it and reported them, and that agent paid a $5,000 fine for illegal use of the lockbox. So, be very careful.
The agent care.
I can see from a liability standpoint, why you want to know who's going in and out.
Well, and then think about how do you report that to the seller? Hey,
Yeah.
we thought they were taking a buyer, they're not interested.
I didn't even know that there wasn't a buyer there. Cameras?
Well, I guess in the end, when you see your promotional video.
When I'm taking videos of properties, like I'll do it right before the buyer arrives. So how do you?
Well, do you have the listing agent's permission to do that?
I learned recently I should. Like, you can't do that. My bad.
The other thing is never send the buyer, like if you know the property is vacant, this would happen to me all the time with my bank listings. I would go around for an inspection and there'd be someone in the house and I'd be like, who the hell are you? Well, so-and-so gave me the combo and said I could come because it's bank owned and vacant. That's totally wrong. You should always accompany your buyer or have someone who is licensed in accessing that property through the lockbox. Accompany your buyer in the.
Dana's point actually brings up something good. You can't share someone else's listing unless you have permission.
Correct.
So remember that. I know a lot of you guys want to try to create content, buyers, get somebody's permission before you do that. Any of it, yeah. You can't share anything unless you have their permission.
MLS photos are copyrighted to the agent who owns that listing. So you can't use that stuff without.
And get it in writing, please.
Yeah, I've never sent a buyer to a listing by themselves, but I've had a listing agent say, because it's vacant, like nobody was there. And I think they had like an offer in And they were set a deadline. They're like, yeah, just send your buyer if you can't go along, like, and we ended up not doing that, but the listing agent gave me permission to do that. I mean, we didn't end up doing it, but is that like a,
My seller's combination, if they damage the property, I'll take care of all that damage
Okay.
myself. Yeah, that's fine. Really, that's. Did you?
What's your take on feedback
I
with
think-
this hot topic? I want to hear from the broker. So what should we be doing with?
One of the big things for me is when I get feedback and it says not interested. No shit, or you would have
Right.
told us not, like, tell us why you're not interested. That's feedback.
Due diligence argument, right? Should we be giving feedback or are we not doing due diligence to our buyers then if, you know what I mean?
I actually, sometimes I've had agents call me and thank me for the feedback I give them. Because they take it to their seller and get a reduction in price.
I'm a big fan of feedback, but I see
Yeah.
the articles and like sweeping across the nation of saying we're not doing due diligence. So you still think what they mean is like, so if I tell you, hey, we don't like this house because of this, and now my buyer changes their mind and the seller's mad because I gave feedback,
You put somewhat,
what?
put somewhat.
Somewhat, but don't give it, like, I don't know, I've just seen a lot of this and I know agents don't give
I
feedback.
just think feedback.
I'm appreciative of it, it's helpful, but I've seen a lot of agents not because of that, so. You recommend giving it, it's not breaking due diligence to your buyer.
This listing agent, I want to hear the good, bad, and the ugly. I want free to sell. That's the goal of feedback.
Because then you don't get the seller start blaming the listing agent because you don't have any data to give.
I guess it's just like with anything, if your buyer wants to circle back, how you give feedback should be professional and it really shouldn't be a big deal if you circle back and change their mind, yeah.
As long as you saw it, who cared? I would think.
Sometimes
They're
it-
not interested. They send you a contract.
Yes, I've had that happen.
But yeah, so I have a question, not for like buyers and sellers. But I run into a couple cases where things are being listed by a particular agent and it's a property management company, but they're never reachable. Like they never respond to text messages, they never respond to phone calls. And they're like absolutely unreachable, but yet they have 90% of the listings in a particular area. What do you do in that case?
I actually have that situation happening to me right now, where I've had a buyer asking me about a property for over a week. And when she calls, they answer the phone. When I call to schedule a showing, no one answers the phone and they're not in showing text. It's very frustrating. I think if you've tried everything that you can, if it's occupied, you could go knock on the seller's door and say, I've been trying to call your agent for X number of days. Could you have them call me? Then they'll have to answer to their seller. For
Now, if that's property management, it's a tenant.
It's rental,
Yeah.
It's a rental.
yeah.
Go by the management company,
Yeah.
ask them.
I was gonna say, do they have bosses or do they have?
It depends on who it is. We can't, I don't want to know who it is in the open room. We can talk after. I think that's the end of my red flag stuff today.
Oh, I do have one more question.
Yeah.
So as a, like, say, because I'm currently looking for a property to rent myself in the area. Do I have to tell the agent that I am the person looking? Okay,
Consumer notice. And somewhere.
I thought that
says we
only,
always have to disclose our interests.
oh, okay.
Because don't forget, we're assumed to be the person with superior knowledge. So when you're being your own consumer against another consumer, you're the one with superior knowledge. So always keep that in mind.
I have one more question.
Okay.
We talked about this a little bit, but I don't think we ever came to like a resolution. I'm starting to see in the agent remarks, like seller would prefer to use XYZ title company. And you know my thoughts on that, but what if it prevents, if you're in a competing, you know what I do? I told you what I do. I just write in that they were using that title company and then send them an email afterwards that we're not using that title company. But is that a reportable violation?
It's actually a federal law. Rest also. The state law being expires for a state for a title. So these agents who own a title company and then want to send our business, plus their own business there, are totally wrong. It's not.
The act of writing it in the MLS remarks like that is the violation.
That's a violation of.
But you can't really prove necessarily with the negotiation. Okay, yeah.
Well, that's a lot of nerve.
What about the builders who offer?
It's the same thing. It's, just no one calls them out on. So I just sold a townhouse in Enola. I guess I shouldn't mention the builder, and they were doing that bullshit where we had to use their lender and their title company for my buyer to
They get
get
a discount.
$10,000 off or $10,000 in like upgrades. I sent them a contract and I just asked for $10,000 assistance because they're advertising it everywhere. But we didn't agree to use their title and we didn't use their lender. So, and I called the agent beforehand and spoke with her about it. And I told her what I thought her boss's violations were, not her, so I didn't blame her. But they accepted our agreement. And then my buyer's terminated later.
Who used to use the other title. I'm not gonna name either. Person is not very pleasant, but that's perfect.
There's an agent from Dillsburg, who's not an agent anymore, she went to federal prison for doing that very same thing. She was a licensed agent, a licensed mortgage broker, and owned in a title company, and she was steering all that business there, among doing many other things that were not in good and ethical or legal. And she went to federal prison in Texas for 10 years. 10 years.
He's a sweet.
Anyway, hopefully that happens in the.
I mean, how do you work around that? If they say, I mean, can you potentially like, I don't know, because I've done too,
Yes.
myself once for a fire.
They pretty much hold the hostage.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be that person who goes way out on a limb and report them for arrest for violation, you want to follow that violation for 2 or 3 years, so it comes to fruition. And that's really what they're looking. Plus, you're going to create a lot of angst. Because like I said to Dana, like someone's got to call them out eventually.
Will you?
When I hit the lottery,
Can you come?
Busy. But this class help you guys.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank Will. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. But they're.